Running a brokerage is hard work, so whether you're focused on building your own sales pipeline, hiring the best agents, leveling up your team's production, or protecting the culture you've built, you're in the right place. Real estate brings the challenges, and we share the solution. Welcome to the show dedicated to broker entrepreneurs. Welcome to the Brokerpreneur Podcast. Hey guys, welcome to another episode of the Brokerpreneur Podcast. I'm Dr. Ben Spears, the Doctor of Flow. I'm here with the big guy as usual, Matt Vi.
Per usual.
What's up, Matt?
Not a whole lot, Benny. What you doing, man?
Not much. We're talking about R&D today, right?
Close. Not
just
necessarily.
The R. Just the R.
Yep.
So tell us a little bit, right? We're talking about research, right? I'm looking at the show notes, guys.
Yeah. We're gonna dig into research just a little bit, and so we're gonna do it from kind of a standpoint of not just recruiting, because we've talked about that a decent amount. Mm-hmm. But your brokerage as a whole, to make sure that you're positioned in a good way to make profits in the market that you're in.
Okay, so positioning, I like that a lot.
Mm-hmm.
Well, guys, before we get started, hit that follow button, hit that subscribe button wherever you are. Go to Brokerpreneur Podcast and check out all the cool things at brokerpreneurpodcast.com. Check out all the cool things that we have there to help you grow your brokerage, no matter what phase or stage of the business that you're in. I want to go ahead and invite everyone before we get started also to Brokerpreneur Not So Secret Society. Right, we do that every single Friday. There's a link to register in the description below of whatever platform you're on. It is absolutely free, right? And it's just a mastermind that we have every single Friday at 12 o'clock Eastern Standard Time via Zoom. And a bunch of brokers get on and we talk shop and talk business and talk about brokerage growth. Again, it's absolutely free to attend. We'd love to see you there. It's just a way for us to meet our listeners. So, Matt.
It's always fun.
Oh, it's a blast. Yeah. There's laughs, all the time, but there's also a ton of knowledge getting dropped, and brokers sharing strategies that basically, you may be on one side of the country, they're on the other side, and they're saying, man, this is what's working for us. This is what our market looks like. We always get market
This is how my
insights.
model works, and this is how, there's just literally all the conversations you can imagine. It's super cool.
Yeah, a lot of collaboration. So Matt,
Positioning. That's not what we're talking about.
I know, but I heard that. I know, but I heard that word. Right. Talk about if research is key, right, and we're talking about profitability and helping everybody grow their brokerages. Right. Tell us how all that pans out.
Yeah. So we have to make sure that we're taking a close look at what's available in the market, right? Yep. And I want to stay. So I can go off a cliff on this. Let's don't do that on research as a whole. When's the last time that you looked at the market that you were in as a broker and said, okay, there's a deficit in this, there's a void in this that I might be able to fill? Yeah. Okay. And so sometimes the void is because another company left, right? You had a company that was, and I'm just going to, for the sake of all of this, I'm just going to say property management. Okay. But it could be a lot of other things. It could be, it could be commercial. It could be very specific. Does your brokerage help people, find, vacation rentals, right? Do they help people with Airbnb? Do they, commercial retail space? Is that really what's big to you because you're in a part of the county that's growing really fast? Yeah. A lot of people are moving in. The rooftops are there, but all of a sudden the retail that's going to support it is getting ready to pop up, and so all of that, right? So it could be a bunch of different things, but we're just going to use the word property management relatively generically. Okay. All right. So it could have been that there was a property management company that was there for a while, and then it's not doing as much business as it has before, right? Either because they're not doing as good of a job as they were before. Maybe they just had one client that was a big client that now has shifted or isn't there anymore, or maybe it's in an area that's a military base, and the military base has half the troops that it used to have, right? Yep. There's a lot of different reasons why that could have shifted or that could have changed. Are you as a broker paying attention to that? Because we hear a lot about it, right? Of course. There's a bunch of time, we know somebody that knows somebody, and somebody sold a house to some agent or whatever, and in the sales meeting this morning they talked about whatever it was, right? All that kind of stuff happens on a really regular basis. But are we keeping up with that, and are we researching that to see if there's an opportunity in there for us to be able to win big based on that? Gotcha. Right? So that's part of what we want to make sure that we want to make sure that we're doing on a regular basis. Okay. And whenever I say a regular basis, I'm not talking about weekly. Okay. I'm talking about however often you're doing your planning as a brokerage. Mm-hmm. When you go into your planning, you should have that information available.
Yeah.
Okay. Don't go into the planning and say, oh, you know what? So I think property management's a great idea. Okay, well, let's research that and I'll see you in a year. Right. That's not how that needs to work. When you go into that planning, you should be ready to make a decision. If you're sitting down with the other owners, or if you're sitting down, and setting time aside yourself to make sure that you're focused on it because you're a broker that does all that type of planning for your company, you want to make sure that you're prepped for that as much as possible. Don't waste that time on making that decision. You should be spending incremental amount of time checking out what's going on in your market, not waiting for that big time, that big decision, that big planning session, that big whatever to decide on that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
You should, to begin researching so that you can decide. That's when you should be deciding.
Yeah, it's kind of like when when an agent has a question, right? And or even just any student, right? It's like, come to me with an idea of a solution,
right?
Before you come and just ask me what does. Yeah, I use that with my kids all the time,
right?
And so you said the P word there, planning. We did a podcast just before this one, basically about how to make a plan easy to execute, right. And so I just want to maybe revert back to that just for a second, because research does make a plan
right
easy to execute,
right?
Yeah. Because you can plan, you can, just like you're saying, you can plan all day, but if it's not based on some sort of
right
information, then you're guessing essentially, right?
Yeah, you can make a plan to make a bunch of money from property management, but there's 19 other property management companies that are literally in the same complex as you.
Yeah.
Right? Okay. Not saying that you can't win in that situation, but you better have one hell of a protracted plan. It's not going to be a tomorrow plan, right?
Yeah.
And so yeah, your research comes into play with all that. You really have to pay attention to where the gap is. And are you able to execute something that's going to help fulfill the need of that gap? Yeah. And go ahead.
No. So my next step question would be, okay, so I've researched a little bit about property management. Maybe I looked at the market and said, man, there's a gap here that I can fill, that kind of thing, and maybe I don't want to add, something like that to my brokerage. Once you implement that,
mm-hmm.
right, are you done with your research? Now is it just like,
yeah, no, of course. Yeah.
Yeah, you're
right.
just like, okay, now let's take action. Or
right.
When does research ever end?
Yeah, it doesn't.
Yeah.
Right. And so that's your point, right? That's the point you're trying to make is research can't ever stop.
Yeah.
The difference is now you have research that you can go get, plus you have measurables to stack up against it.
Yeah.
As soon as you put something in place, like I want to have a certain number of units, and I want to chart, I want to have an average amount of this much per unit per year, all that kind of stuff on as far as income and revenue and profitability based on that, depending on whether you're doing it or somebody else is handling it for you. You've got all those things kind of figured out. That doesn't mean that you're not going to go back and continue looking at the market to see if you can't drive that per unit revenue up year over year. Right?
Yeah.
But now you have another measurable to measure it against. You've got something else to look at it and say, okay, I want to make more money. Here's the gap that I see in the business. I started here, but and that's working kind of the way it's supposed to and everything. Is there any way that I can push the envelope on that to make sure that I get more off of that gap? To make sure I plug that gap before somebody else realizes I'm doing it and starts trying to do the same thing. So yeah, you can't stop researching. You have to make sure that you continue leaning into it. But now what you're researching becomes more and more defined, becomes more and more targeted because you actually have some measurables to measure it against.
Hey, Dr. Ben here. I hope you're enjoying this episode. If sometimes you feel overloaded or alone when it comes to building your brokerage, I want you to know that we are here for you. There's so much support available to agents, but hardly any dedicated to brokers. I want to personally invite you to schedule a complimentary strategy call where Matt will help you build a 3-step profitability plan that will immediately produce results. This is not a sales pitch. There's no obligation. Simply click the link in the description below. Now let's get back to the show. Yep. And so, now I want to talk about something that is maybe a warning when it comes to research. Because, right, like, no one loves research more than I do.
Right.
All right, guys, I can't tell you how much I love to learn. It's just nonstop. I'll read and learn about anything.
Right.
It becomes a problem.
Right.
You can go down a lot of rabbit holes with research. Yeah. Right. So I want to touch on that just a little bit, but keeping that focus. Right. So once you're like, okay, I'm going to look for some gaps, or maybe I found a gap within my brokerage that I need to fill. Let me start researching that. So the next meeting that I have with whoever, I can come and I can say, okay, this is what I'm thinking, people. Mm-hmm. You can go down those rabbit holes and find 6 other things to research.
Absolutely.
And then end up trying to implement 17 things into your plan.
Right.
When all of a sudden it's like, okay, you really just needed one and you can't execute 17.
Right. Yeah, that goes back to, I use this example probably 5 times a week. Ben's probably tired of hearing it. You can start watching a cat playing a piano on social media, and the next thing you know, man, you are in some other rabbit hole that you had no idea that has nothing to do with a cat or a piano.
Mowing lawns.
That's exactly right. You've got no for free.
Yeah.
Right. So you've got to make sure that you stay on track with what those things are. And just like with social media, research can be that same exact way.
Yes.
And so the best way to do that is time block it.
Yeah.
Okay. And have some idea of what you're trying to get into from the research standpoint, what you're trying to accomplish. Okay?
Like an objective, yeah.
Like an objective, right? Am I trying to make sure that I know, how many property management companies there are in the town that I'm in? Am I trying to see how many units are available on the MLS and what's the average number of units that all the other companies have, or who has the most market share with property management from what I can tell through the MLS or through whatever rental site I use or whatever the deal is.
Yeah.
Have some type of objectives, have some type of finite, this is what I'm trying to accomplish, and then time block to get that done.
Yeah. So one way of doing that, because we do this a lot, right? So Matt loves to learn. I love to learn. We research a lot in our business. We're always looking like, okay, what can we do to help our brokers, right? What can we do to help our coaching clients? What can we do to help our podcast listeners?
Right.
And every time, right? You more than me, right? Because Matt's like the ideas guy. I'm the weaponizer essentially, but every time it's like, oh, what about this? Mm-hmm. Oh, what about that? But we're disciplined enough to put it on a list.
Yeah,
right?
Most of the time.
Yeah, most of the time we're disciplined enough to put it on a list, and it's almost like, okay, let's think about that. We'll revisit that.
Right.
But let's stay on track. And that comes from Gino Wickman's book Traction, the EOS system, Entrepreneurial Operating System, where you pull things called rocks. Mm-hmm. And so I'm just bringing this up because it's like, hey guys, go read this book, right? It's a great book. I'm definitely not gonna rehash Traction here, but just know, like, as you're doing this research, this little side note, other things are gonna pop up. Mm-hmm. But if it doesn't match that objective that Matt just talked about from a time blocking standpoint, man, write that page number down or whatever you got to do, and come back to it. You don't have to say, oh man, well, I guess it's just a missed opportunity.
Right.
No, come back to it. 2 weeks later, a week later, a day later, whatever you need to do, right. Come back to it. But just make sure that one step at a time. You're reaching or researching. I guess would be the best way of saying you're researching what it is that you're trying to accomplish in the next part of your business.
Yeah, absolutely. And so you have to make sure that. There's a bunch of authors and speakers and everything that talk about this. The answer is either hell yes or no.
Yeah.
Right? It's either yes, I'm excited about this. Oh my gosh, this changes things. Oh my God, that's the direction I need to go in. Or the answer is just no.
Yeah.
There is no maybe, and there's no, yeah, this is a good idea. Maybe we should do this at whatever point, and yeah, let's try that or whatever, right? So it's like Yoda, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, there is no try.
Yeah, only do.
Only do.
Only
right.
do.
Yeah. And so whenever it comes to your research, as you start to go down these rabbit holes, or they present themselves, it's either a hell yes, it's very associated directly with what it is that I'm researching, or the answer is just no. Yeah. Don't do it. Don't go that route. Don't try to figure that out. Don't start tracking that metric. Don't any of that. Find the one that you know that you need to get to the bottom of. Block the time off. Stay on your objective. And if anything detracts from that objective, you need to see whether it is something that helps complete what it is that you're trying to do, or it's just a no.
Yeah, absolutely. A great way to think about it is, if you decide, hey, you know what, I'm gonna start selling donuts, right, out of my backyard or my garage, right. Probably shouldn't be like researching on how to, how much a fleet of delivery trucks should cost, right? Right. Just really look at your business. Schedule a free strategy call with Matt. I'll say that. Look at your business and say, man, what comes next?
Right.
And if you don't know, man, like we'd love to help you with that. So,
yeah. And there's been times when we started in one place and then ended up having to make adjustments with people because it wasn't where they needed to be putting their efforts for. One, ultimately we figured out that wasn't where their heart was.
Yeah.
Right. And so you've got to find another way around that, right? And some of that comes from really researching, digging in whenever we're having conversations and everything. And sometimes it's just from the market doesn't show the gaps that we thought that it showed. And whenever we dig in, we're like, okay, there's not as much opportunity there as we thought. We need to do this instead.
Yeah. And a great example of this, whether you guys, know him or not, but is Mr. Beast.
Yep.
Right. So Mr. Beast is an insanely successful YouTuber who does so many different videos now that it's not even funny. He doesn't really have like one thing that he does, but he's really famous for giving things away and cash and doing these games and playing hide and seek for $100,000 or something like that.
Right.
Well, his big thing was like, man, I just want to be. I don't care what it takes. I just want to be a famous YouTuber.
Mm-hmm.
And when he started his YouTube, it was he had like no subscribers for like 5 years
mm-hmm.
because he played video games for a little bit. He tried to stream video games, and then maybe he did some unboxing stuff, right? He just tried all these different things, but the whole time, every change that he made was based on research.
Mm-hmm.
He didn't just guess. He looked out there and he said, "What's working in my market?"
Right.
Or what I'm trying to accomplish. Okay, well, let me try that. Is that something that I would be interested in doing, on a regular basis to do that? Well, now all of a sudden he's on the cover of Forbes, 30 under 30.
Right.
Right. But it's only because, man, he stuck to it and he said, I'm going to get really good at this one thing before I move to the next. And if it just doesn't work, gosh, it's okay. I'm researching the next step already.
Right.
So, Matt, closing thoughts.
Closing arguments.
Yeah, what's your closing argument?
The ladies and gentlemen brokers of the jury. Just understand, you got to do your research.
Yeah,
that's it.
Starts with
guilty as charged.
Starts with for a reason.
That's right.
It's not just search.
That's right.
It's research. Search again, guys.
That's exactly right.
Awesome. Well, wherever you're listening to this, make sure you hit that follow button. Hit that, no matter what, it's iTunes, Spotify, Stitcher, Deezer. If you're watching us on YouTube, hit that red subscribe button and hit that bell right beside it to get notified every time we drop a new episode. And go to brokerpreneurpodcast.com. Check out all the cool things that Matt and I have. There was always some free stuff that we're giving away there to help you grow your brokerage. And then last but certainly not least, in the description below, there's a bunch of links. Whenever you're ready to take the next step to kind of meet Matt and I in person, there's a bunch of different ways to do that. Again, absolutely free. We just do this for one reason and one reason alone, Matt. Tell them why that is.
We just want to be part of their win, Ben.
That's right.
Yep.
See ya.
See you guys.